That's cool. I'm just gonna do a quick intro and some fun questions. So thanks for the time, bro. Um,
Sure.
all right, here we go. Welcome to Wilfred Watches Podcast, an American podcast about pro wrestling. And before I introduce my killer guest, I have to thank my Patreons who are supporting me. It's a small group, but a strong group. So thanks Luke, JPQ, Courtney, Dimitri, Rick, Freddie, Juan, and Archie. Thank you very much for helping out, guys. Today, my guest is killing it in Impact Wrestling, Capital Wrestling, and everywhere and anywhere he damn well pleases. He is regularly main eventing Impact Wrestling, which is now on Pursuit Channel and Twitch. Please welcome Killer Kross.
Oh, hello.
Hello, thank you, man. Very glad to finally speak to you. You're kind of a late bloomer in the world of pro wrestling. Why are you so late to the party, man?
Well, to be completely honest with you, I have always been very fortunate in terms of being very good at whatever I choose to do because I'm a very dedicated person. So whatever I'm doing, generally as a rule of thumb, apply 100% of all of my energy into it to get the best results. And I've just been financially stable and secure in other endeavors throughout my life. But as I came to learn the hard way, monetary stability is not always necessarily the most fulfilling thing. And it just got to a point where I really needed to pursue what was going to bring me fulfillment, which was my first and most original passion, which was professional wrestling. Since I was little, I've always wanted to do it. And I just decided, well, I've got all this other stuff set up occupationally in my life. I might as well give this a shot. And first month I started training, I was on the shows.
That's incredible, dude. So we were talking about this, me and my friend Josh, on his show, and we were talking about how like we came up into watching wrestling and how WWF is usually WWE the one that brings people into our niche of pro wrestling as a fan or a future wrestler. Was it the color and the bright music and the bright colors and the flashy music that brought you in, or was it more of a sporty background, like more of a combat background that kind of brought you into pro wrestling?
Honestly, it was the Ultimate Warrior. I mean, like that was it.
He's
remember.
Both. Yeah,
He was both. All encompassing. His energy was completely magnetic, and my very first memory that I could ever even recall, my earliest memory, was watching Ultimate Warrior on TV, and like a I don't know, like a 20 by 20 inch television. That's the first thing I remember. That was pre-programmed since I was little to be in love with pro wrestling. There's never been a time in my life where I haven't watched it.
There's something really spellbinding when you see Warrior as a kid or as a youth, man. It's just, he was the only one who like ran full speed. He had the music, it's just, yeah, I don't blame you, man. He was, him, Hogan, Macho Man, Bret Hart, some of these guys were just like huge influences for so many people at that time, man.
Absolutely. Even too, like, a lot of my pro wrestling brethren, they always feel like that's a very political question. Like a lot of people, I'm not going to expose them, but a lot of people are afraid to say who their favorites were. They think that this is like, they need to say somebody like Bret Hart or Shawn Michaels or Ric Flair, or, and they may have been, legitimately, those may have been their favorites, but everyone always feels really compelled to talk about a technician or someone who had really good ring psychology. Like, I'm just completely flat out honest. Like, Ultimate Warrior as a child completely captured my imagination. And, I've no embarrassment or any sort of humiliation even admitting that it wasn't all these other people, it was him. And something, that guy was a multi-million-dollar investment and did everything the complete opposite way everyone told him to, and it worked out. And I think just as a human being, he's a really good rule of thumb to see what happens when you follow your intuition. When everyone tells you you're totally insane, perhaps you are, but would you rather be insane and be a millionaire and enjoy what you're doing, or would you rather be trapped in the rat race with somebody else's creative parameters and kind of living aimlessly or through the hands of someone else?
Some of the best wrestlers that have broken through and been pillars in the sport, especially here in the United States, have been the people who are themselves, but just turned up to like 3,000, you know? And Warrior was definitely a hardcore athlete, very focused. And yeah, I don't care about politics. Hogan was everybody's icon when you were a kid. So that's how it is. And so anyways, how did you get into more of like a pancrase kind of style, like a more when did you get exposed to like Japanese wrestling and British wrestling, and when did you get deeper into the genre of pro wrestling?
Well, I grew up in a family that, you know, like, I mean, we're generations deep in combat sports. Like, my father boxed and wrestled. My grandfather boxed in the armed service for the United States.
Wow.
We grew up wrestling and boxing and playing combat sports. Like, on my father's side, there was 6 boys and 1 girl. Like, it was a massive family. Mm-hmm. And all of them, including the girl, they were all growing up doing martial arts and combat sports. So I grew up with that, but I, you know, really didn't discover what you're talking about within the pro wrestling genre until my early 20s. I was living in Toronto at the time. I got some cable package, and Fight Network was attached to it. And Fight Network was airing UWFI and Pancrase, and I would just leave that channel on all day. I loved it. I loved every single program on that channel. And then one day that came on, and I was cooking, and, you know, I'm hearing whack, 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 and you hear the Japanese crowd, oh. So I go over and look at the TV, and I remember it was Kakihara. He was beating the snot out of somebody. I mean, he was hitting like 4-piece combinations and then like capping them off with head kicks in like 3 seconds, like shots guys don't even know they're getting hit with. And for a moment, all over again, I was like, I didn't know if this was real. So I just sat down, and I was so fascinated by it. And I was like, okay, this is a shoot work. I was like, man, I really like this. I was like, I wasn't even bothered that it was a work. I was like, I really enjoyed it. You know, it's a performance art, just like pro wrestling. Like, there's a lot of things that you can't work in pro wrestling. You know, they're going to hurt and they're going to be uncomfortable, and it's just part of the pride and the passion, and, you know, that you have for your work and that you have for the paying fan. And I was just so allured by it. I was like, my God. And I was always a fan of pro wrestling, but when I saw UWFI in my early 20s on Fight Network, I was like, man, if there's ever a place to do this, I'm going to do it. And I actually did. My first year, I reached out to Antonio Inoki, and I think 7 months into my training, I was doing shoot work in Japan for Inoki Genome Federation. A lot of people don't know about that, but yeah, I was overseas with Jinder Mahal, Mike Knox, and Mason Ryan. So a little bit of info that a lot of people don't know about.
That's wild, man. And I'm just thinking about you fighting like that. It's just, you know, I remember we all get captured by wrestling in one way or another, whether it's the bright colors as a kid or the music or the combat. You know, we all get pulled in somehow, and hearing different people's perspectives and hearing yours is just wild. So another influence I think that you might have is Brian Pillman.
Huge.
And his son is actually really doing very well right now, coming up through MLW, and you MLW and Impact just announced you guys are going to do some stuff during April, which is very cool. Do you ever have any interest in either, you know, tagging with him or having a really good like blood feud with Pillman Jr.?
You know, I actually reached out to Brian maybe 2 years ago because I saw an article on my news feed of him saying that he had an interest in getting involved with pro wrestling. I didn't even, you know, like, I'm a diehard fan of Brian Pillman, but like not to the level where I knew like how many kids he had or like whether he was married. I didn't know anything about the personal Brian Pillman. I just knew like the documentary stuff of him, right? And like his working history. So when I found out he had a son and his son was saying he was interested, I reached out to his son on social media. I said, hey, dude, I said, I never met your dad, but your dad was a huge inspiration to me. And I said, if there's anything that you think that I could ever assist you with, whatever it is, please reach out to me because I owe your dad a lot, never even meeting him. And if there's anything that I could ever personally do for you, like, I don't want anything out of it. Just let me know. And I said, you're probably going to have the whole world at your disposal, you know, all these people to help him who knew his dad. I was like, I just wanted him to know, just as a fucking stranger, pardon my French, but just as a stranger, I just wanted him to know that, you know, there's there's a random guy out there that will do something for him if he needs it. And I've just very leisurely always been in contact with Brian since. And we were actually almost tagged last year in Los Angeles, but it didn't come to fruition. We were going to do a tag team, me and him, in Vegas and Los Angeles. So I definitely would be interested in working with him in the future. And I've actually been speaking to a couple people who work for MLW, not in the office, but I am interested in doing something with them, but they better hurry up.
Yeah, that would be a pretty killer tag team to see, man, to see how you're inspired and how you're very homicidal, and to see the Loose Cannons Kid. That would be pretty wicked as a fan. So what is it like being on a lot of different programs all at one time? Is that kind of weird for you at this point in your career? It's like, whoa, I'm on this TV, I'm on this channel, I'm in this program. You're on Impact, Lucha Underground in the past, AAA, Capital. I mean, how is that like for you? Just like reflecting back, like, holy crap, I wanted to be a wrestler, but I had no idea I'd be on like 4 different programs.
I love it because on all 4 programs, it's 4 different working styles, and there's a variation and a different range that I can play in terms of character presentation and different people to work with. So it's making me all around a lot better. It's really improved my timing, and it's improved my imagination and my creativity to get to certain things. And it allows me to experiment with a lot of other different types of just placements and spots and stuff like that. It's improved my confidence, especially working in places where, like we don't have the ability to communicate. You have to learn to speak the language in the ring. Like my Spanish is not as good as I'd like it to be. Mm-hmm. So, I can go in there and work with people and not be able to speak a little of anything. I can just read body language and get to stuff. And I found, having a shoot background, that really helps too. So if you want to put somebody somewhere, you'll take them and they're going whether they want to or not. So
do you think you find it harder to, like when you're in the ring, actually in the ring, listening to the crowd and, also competing, do you think that it's harder from your vantage point to get over a Mexican crowd that doesn't speak the same language as you, or like a super smart crowd who thinks they know everything in the United States?
I don't mean this egocentrically whatsoever. I don't ever have a problem dealing with crowds and getting over. And the reason being is because, as you said, I'm a late bloomer, right? I like the fan in me, and a lot of people will advise me not to say this, but the fan in me is still alive. And I think that a lot of people spend too much time in the business and they isolate themselves way too much as a quote unquote professional versus a fan, because we all start that as one. They forget about what fans want to see. Like, I know the difference between the guy you're talking to now and Killer Kross. Killer Kross is something totally different, and people are paying to see Killer Kross, not the guy that you're talking to now. I know what they want to see out of him because I know what I would want to see out of something like that, out of that character presentation. They want to see a larger-than-life character is going to do something out of control, and they want to see people get beat up really bad. They want to believe. Mm-hmm. So if I can always remember that context and put things together and get to things organically with that in mind, it's never a problem. And I never, even the first time I went to Mexico, Vampiro met me at the curtain, and he goes, I've never seen a foreigner ever show up and get over like that on their first time. He goes, welcome aboard. And every single person in AAA came over and shook my hand. Wow. So dude. I love this. So because I love it, it's relatively easier for me, if that makes sense. Like anything in life, if you love painting, when somebody puts something in front of you and they say paint this, it's not a problem. But if you only like painting watercolors and somebody puts an oil paint next to you and tells you to paint something you don't really want to paint, it might not come out the way you really want it to, in the final product, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does make sense that, in order to understand what the fans like and the people who are paying to see you like, then it helps to be a fan and not lose touch of that, because once you lose touch of being a fan, then you don't know what you're looking at when people are shouting at you. You don't really know what they're doing.
Precisely.
So another major influence of your character, Killer Kross, which I'm terrified. I'm thankful. Thank you for not having Killer Kross in this chat, or else I would have to bring a knife or something. I don't even think
just don't play the music. Just do not play the music.
No music being played here. Post production later. So another major influence would be Natural Born Killers. Obviously, that was the first thing I thought of when I saw your character for the first time about a year ago or so. Very homicidal, very Woody Harrelson. It was a fantastic freaking movie. Tell us about how you thought it would be received and how it actually has turned out. I mean, has it your perception of the character actually turned out to be as good as you hoped, or better, or what?
It's this is always tricky to answer, but I have gotten most of the character inspiration from the crowd and listening to the crowd. And in the beginning, when I had very little exposure, all of the feedback I was getting from when I was in the ring and then after the show came from social media. Like, I never came up with a toe man. That wasn't mine. I had cut a promo basically saying all these overgrown children masquerading around as adults walking around here playing the role. Well, when I come around, you're going to have to pay the toll. And I literally just rolled off my mouth. Like, I didn't mean to rhyme or be catchy or anything. And people would just say, "Oh, the toll man." And everyone started calling me the toll man online. I was like, well, they're paying to see this guy and they're giving me something right now. Like, I always thought it was kind of lame to come up with your own nickname, like just in general in real life. Like, yeah, call me Rocky.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell is that all about? So I was like, they're calling me the toll man. I mean, it doesn't matter what it means to me. It means something to them. And whether it's endearing or it's, it was meant to be a rib, I don't know. But like, I ran with it and they liked it. And Killer Kross came from one time, in the match, it was perceived that I was trying to kill Shane Douglas. I took my wrist tape off and I wrapped it around his throat and I grapevined him and strangled him out with the tape. And people thought it looked like the scene from No Country for Old Men with Javier Bardem when he's in the handcuffs and he wraps the handcuffs around the cop's throat. They were taking pictures of it and, tagging No Country for Old Men, Killer Kross. Like, so when you ask me about my idea of it, I mean, of course, I'm a Natural Born Killers fan, Woody Harrelson. The glasses are obviously a nod to him and Pillman. I mean, my vision has been, Killer Kross is 30% me and 70% fans in the weirdest way. Like, they've really cultivated who this guy or entity, if you want to even refer to him as that, what he really became over the last 4 or 5 years has been from fan feedback. Like, I show up and I show them something, and then based on how they're receiving it, and sometimes it's right on the mark from how I was planning to execute it, I just carry it with me. I carry the things people give to me. And I think that's why I've been able to have such a strong residual fan base, because they feel connected, because they are. Like, it's a shoot.
It's fascinating because we don't typically talk about it in our society, but we have this really sick fascination with morbidity, and it's something that we do as humans, but we don't typically talk about. And people probably, I would say, that see that in you and they want to hear you talk crazy and do crazy stuff, because it's the same as like slowing down for a car accident. People don't subjectively stop to do that, but they just slow down subconsciously and say, oh, well, let's just see. And that's that morbid fantasy that people have that we don't talk about as humans. We are vicious characters and we get to see it play out on screen through you. So that's, you're killing it. So anyways, you said about social media, you interact with fans like nobody's business. I actually met Courtney at a Ring of Honor show this weekend. She's probably one of the biggest fans ever. What do you think about that? Like, you've been getting such amazing reception online, social media, and such a huge fan base. Like, I don't know, like through Twitter and Facebook and all that stuff. It's fascinating because that wasn't there in the 90s. I just want your perception of, social media and how it's helping you.
Well, when I got into this, I had no idea how to get on television. I just figured I'd go to school to learn how to do this, and then I would go to a WWE tryout and get hired. Like, I had no idea the whole process of what was even, what entailed of the education of learning this. I just didn't get it. So I didn't really have anyone thoroughly explain to me how it was going to work. Everyone just told me, they were like, oh, you're made for this. You're going to get hired immediately. So I went in with very high confidence, and I learned very quickly that it was not that simple. And there was a pecking order, and there was politics, and certain people just can't get hired without being endorsed by other people who are there, and all this stuff. And I just sat back and I was like, okay, so this is how this works. On the independents, no one knows you exist except for a local community, and on television, you have world distribution. So I was like, well, I don't want to wrestle like these people on the independents. And I didn't mean that in a derogatory way. I just meant my aim is for television. Mm-hmm. That's my aim. That is the kind of presentation I want to have. So what do I got to do? So I was always doing functional weightlifting, which doesn't really have anything to do with aesthetics. You can get real strong, but you might not look like an athlete. So I learned how to diet properly. And then I learned how to lift weights to change body composition. And then I looked at the business structure of television wrestling, commercial wrestling, if you want to call it that. What is it about what they do versus what the independents do in terms of presentation? Well, obviously it has something to do with the business and the budget. Budget was a big thing, high budget versus low budget. And then, I started looking at what sort of footage I could retrieve from the independents of my matches. And I saw, I obviously got to learn how to do these promos. I got to get comfortable. So I did that. And suddenly I had match content, and suddenly I had promo content. And I thought to myself, how can I take what I'm doing on an independent level and make it look commercially good? So then I taught myself how to use video editors, and I just kept teaching myself and learning, because I was like, no one's going to hold my hand through this. And if I want this, no one's just going to show up and go, hey, here it is. Like, I'm going to have to learn how to do this. And I was just very self-taught through the whole experience of it. And I took what content I could create on my own, and I tried to put my own creative post-production grind to it. And that's basically what you saw. Like, that was and I blasted it on social media. To tie it back to your question, social media basically got me on television. And that's how I use social media. I took myself on an independent level and took all the content, and I chopped it up and put it out there. And I don't even think I don't even have a job on TV if social media didn't exist. I really believe that, because I created my own presentation of how I wanted people to perceive this guy with social media.
Isn't that crazy? Like, I wonder how you would have fit into the 90s. I wonder how you would have been more of, like, I don't know, just thinking off the cuff here, like a more of a viral marketing kind of guy. You would have had like a commercial ad spot or something. Like, I wonder. I think ECW actually would have been great for you, because you could.
Tommy said that to me, and Tommy Dreamer, Chavo Guerrero, Paul London, and Chris Masters all paid me probably the highest compliment that I've ever gotten. And it was, in their own way, they said that, like, you would have been one of us. Like, you would have fit in. This guy would have liked you. That guy would have liked you. And, like, to get a compliment like that, that's
incredible.
Yeah. Man. It's, I didn't even know. Words elude me how to express how meaningful that is to hear something like that. People you look up to that you grew up watching, to say that. They kind of alluded to the same thing. They were like, if you were around during this time, you would have been able to swim. No problem.
Yeah, because ECW, man, I mean, I was about, I want to say like 13. I know nobody listening to this gives a crap, but I was a big ECW fan as a teenager, and that was the time where I was like, oh, girls, violence, And I think your character really, really would have fit into that mold really well as a fan from my side of the screen. So, yeah, crazy thoughts, man. So talking about fantasy draft and speculation and all that crap. We'd love to do fantasy drafts and speculate who goes where and all that stuff. If New Japan came with an open checkbook to you, would you go? And who would you want to take on first?
Open checkbook?
Yeah.
Yes, I would go. I would. I think first thing to do would be to go after Tanahashi. I think that's the most sensible thing to do. The Gaijin versus the Japanese has always been known to draw very well. Obviously, everyone wants to work Kenny Omega. That would be on the bucket list as well. Me personally, I think my best match that I could probably ever have in New Japan is going to be against Kota Ibushi. Oh. I think a lot of people, for real, cannot handle the way I kick. So I'm not going to pull the kicks. I'm just not going to do them if I know that they can't deal with them. Mm-hmm. But I am 100% certain, based on the way Kota wrestles, that he would be able to deal with them. And you guys will see. I'll be throwing them on TV very soon with a few people. You'll see what I'm talking about. They're in. They get laid in. So just knowing we can get into a kickoff, him and I, would be something worth the price of admission.
And we're talking on the 30th of January right now, and there's a master of the kick, Kenta.
Yes,
looks like he's going to be heading out pretty soon. You think you could jump over to Noah if he goes back to Noah and do a little match with him? Because that would be amazing.
I expressed to Scott D'Amore and to Don Callis for the last 6 months that I would like to be sent to Noah. So
Really?
Hopefully that happens. Yes. I want to go right now. If there was a plane leaving in 2 hours, I would grab a sweater. I would leave with the clothes that I have on me and leave with absolutely nothing and buy everything I need when I get there.
Really? Okay. Well, I'm going to have to tell my friend Hisame, which you probably see online plenty. She's like the, unofficial English source. Yeah, she gets me into Noah, man. I've been watching for the last about 6 months regularly. And that's a fit where I people talk about you and the Bullet Club, you and this, whatever, you and that. But I think Noah, personally, and I'm really psyched. I'm popping over here to hear you say that, because that would be an amazing fit as a fan to see you over there. So let's switch it up a little bit. As a kid, what was one of your favorite cartoons?
Well, Batman the Animated Series was incredible. Mm-hmm. I would say X-Men, when that was on, Spider-Man. It was like the whole Saturday lineup on Fox. Cops, the cartoon show that used to come on at 7 a.m. I don't remember what channel it came on, but it was like the Blade Runner police. It was like all the cops and detectives that had like robotic arms, and all the criminals were all cybernetically enhanced. It was like a Blade Runner cartoon, basically. It was awesome. If no one had ever heard of that, YouTube Cops, the cartoon show. It's just totally insane. It's the most insane cartoon show I've ever seen in my life.
That's saying something. So you're in Mexico a lot. You're in Las Vegas, Los Angeles. You're all over the kind of Southwest. You're all over the world, really. But what is your go-to food spot when you hit up Mexico? Do you have a restaurant or taco joint or anywhere that you just have to go to every time that you could recommend to us?
No.
What about the States? No. Is there like a guilty pleasure you go to, like Carl's Jr. or something like that? Like, is there a guilty pleasure place you go to?
When I'm in Mexico, I always try to find carne asada, which is like a soft steak.
Yeah, dude. I'm in San Antonio. I know exactly what that is.
Okay. I'm living and breathing off of eggs and carne asada.
Okay.
My diet is super basic. A guilty pleasure place that I go to just in general, no matter where I am. I mean, if you put some coffee ice cream in front of me, or I happen to find that Rocky for, what is it, Ben & Jerry's Super Fudge Chunk, I mean, the game is over. Like, that's it. There's no coming back. If that's near me in a radius and I don't have to wrestle immediately, that is being devoured at light speed.
So lifetime supply of that chocolate or a ticket to Noah? Which one?
Oh my God. I mean,
you walked into it, man. You walked into it. What can I say?
This is hell. This is hell. Like this is the Hellraiser 55, and I just opened the box, and Pinhead has come out, and he just posed that question, just asked me. You played with the box. You opened it. Now we're here. Like, that's what's going on right now. I mean, I'm going to go to Noah. I'm going to go Noah because my life would be shortly lived with that much ice cream.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, I want to thank you, man. What do we have coming up for Killer Kross in 2019? What are we looking forward to? Should I just go hide under my bed now, or what? Like,
Well, what do we have? I mean, possible jail time, mental institution,
light homicide.
Yeah, pretty much. What we're looking at, in my opinion, is probably a debut in the UK this year. Working with a very relevant Japanese company, and more television time. Yeah.
Very well. We'll leave it with there. Guys, please check out killerkross.com. Follow him at Real Killer Kross on Twitter. for amazing content, so you know what's going on. He's you have a pro wrestling tee store as well, right?
Yes, I do. All of my links for all social media and free media. I have a YouTube channel that has documented basically my entire career for the last 4.5 years. It's all free except for the merch. But all the links are going to be on killerkross.com. The Pro Wrestling Tees link is there, and there's also an official Impact Wrestling Tees as well. But every single design that goes up on Pro Wrestling Tees is either for me or my buddy Vinny, and we both collaborate them together. Please take a look and enjoy.
And please check out Impact. You've got a big tag team match coming up, I think, with you and Moose, taking on Cage and Morrison this week on Impact, on Pursuit, and Twitch. So please check out Impact on Pursuit and Twitch. And thank you from the bottom of my heart, Killer Kross.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.